Incredible transformation. The janitor's hidden genius exposed after the CEO's shocking doubt. Larry knelt on the cool tile floor of the towering architecture firm in Chicago, a thin sheen of sweat coating his brow. A standard Tuesday, he thought, as he gathered empty coffee cups and balled-up papers left behind by the high-minded architects who roamed the halls like deities. Yet today, behind the closed doors of the conference room, the air seemed charged with a tension that prickled at his skin. He grasped the edge of the trash bin tightly, instinct screaming to flee. Success requires education, pedigree, and experience. Rachel, the firm's ambitious CEO, declared with unrestrained arrogance, "We don't have time for dreamers." Those words sliced through Larry, leaving him momentarily paralyzed. The notion of dreamers, the very essence that had fueled his countless sketches, felt like a cruel taunt, echoing the memory of his father's faded dreams. Pain shot through his chest as disparate memories colluded, his father passionately explaining the elegance of design, crushed only by societal prejudice and economic despair. The emptiness of his own salary couldn't stifle the fire that ignited in him, but it came at a cost, a fear threatening to unravel years of hidden ambition. What was he doing here, cleaning up after architects when his fingers longed to craft structures? Larry closed his eyes, breath catching in his throat. His daughter Emily, young and bright, aimed for innovation in her explorations, inspired but searching for her true calling. Could she develop a passion without an example to follow? Did she deserve to see her father cower in the shadows? The trash bag tore, papers spilling onto the floor. Was he truly ready to confront not only her expectations but also his own? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Gathering his architectural sketches, stained with years of longing, he felt an odd adrenaline course through him. Submission seemed like a tombstone for his dreams, but also his only chance to unearth them. At that moment, what could he lose? Only the safety of anonymity, the comfort of walking the halls unseen. Each stride toward the submission box felt monumental, an act of defiance against Rachel's scornful, privileged worldview. The whispers began. Larry's artistry churning among the colleagues provoked a wave of unease. Their questions cut deeply. Who does he think he is? An outdated janitor with dreams? The echo of Rachel's dismissal reverberated louder, a chorus of doubt surrounding him. What if he didn't belong? He imagined the stares, the laughter that would pierce through him if he failed. He had emerged from the basement of the firm into the blinding light of scrutiny, but would he have the strength to withstand it? As Rachel locked eyes with him from across the room, her brow furrowed in challenge, Larry felt both exhilaration and dread coil inside him. The battle was coming, her authority versus his passion. One moment could change not just the firm, but their lives. As the impending confrontation loomed, Larry fought to tame the maelstrom within. Would he finally speak against the tides of doubt, or retreat and let the shadows claim his dreams once more? The world lay waiting, charged and electric, caught on the precipice of revelation. Larry stood at the submission box, his pulse thrumming in tandem with the chaos of his thoughts. The sketches in hand felt heavier than the trash bags he'd been accustomed to carrying, symbolic pages of his hidden brilliance that had long lingered in the shadows of despair. Breathing evenly, he focused. This was it. The soft hum of the office enveloped him, filled with muffled conversations and the sounds of footsteps echoing in the carpeted corridors. He felt separate, floating just outside their realm, the architects unaware of the battle raging internally. The realization that he was ready, that he might finally emerge from the periphery, surged through him like an electric current. Rachel had unleashed a tidal wave of doubt with her dismissive comments. "We don't have time for dreamers." Those words replayed relentlessly in his mind, morphing into fuel for a revolution. What did she know about the dreamers who decided to turn visions into reality? Yet a creeping thought persisted. Was he merely masquerading as an architect while merely cleaning the floors? The irony wasn't lost on him. The very hands that scrubbed the remnants of creativity were also capable of creating beauty. In that moment of clarity, he made a decision to confront Rachel, to shift the narrative from one of mockery to one of recognition. But how to approach her? The most powerful CEO in Chicago would scarcely acknowledge a janitor's perspective. The instinct to retreat loomed large, a stark reminder of the many years he had played the part of the invisible man. Steeling himself, Larry envisioned Emily standing beside him, her bright eyes lighting the dark corners of his uncertainty. He needed to act not just for himself, but for her, for the future that awaited if he chose a path of courage instead of surrender. With a deep breath, he stepped into the conference room, the air thick with ambition and competition. The gathering of architects, formerly throned in their lofty expertise, fell silent as Larry's presence sequestered the past and unveiled the potential for something new. He couldn't ignore the prying eyes and snickers, flashes of judgment haunting him. Maybe, just maybe, they could all experience the shifts that personal growth ignited. "Rachel," he began, his voice steady yet laced with vulnerability. "You once said that success requires more than just education. It demands passion, creativity, and the audacity to dream. I've held that dream within me for years, and while I may not wear a tailored suit or carry a degree from a prestigious university, my hands know the weight of design. They flourish with imagination, just like everyone else in this room." The silence was palpable, a collective intake of breath while Larry's heart raced in anticipation. He continued to speak, revealing his sketches, showing them the ideas and dreams he had carefully cultivated, hidden beneath years of routine. Each line edged closer to his dreams, each concept a challenge to the status quo Rachel represented. For the first time, Larry was no longer just a janitor to them. He was a vessel of potential, a messenger of the unspoken narrative thriving within the margins of their lofty works. He met Rachel's gaze, a flicker of surprise flaring in her eyes. Would she deflect the urgency of his passion or engage with a spark of curiosity? As his words echoed against the corporate walls, Larry felt an unmistakable shift within himself. The silence shattered like glass, awaiting the inevitable response. The battle was no longer just about him. This was a reckoning that transcended his own ambitions. Would Rachel acknowledge the talent before her, or would she cling to her antiquated notions of worth? The room hung in suspense, waiting for the moment of truth. The stillness in the room stretched painfully as Larry held his breath, uncertain of how his offering would be received. Rachel's gaze was a mixture of confusion and scrutiny, each passing second amplifying the tension. Murmurs started to ripple through the group, an undertow of skepticism that could pull him back into obscurity. He could feel the weight of judgment heavily resting on his shoulders, but he also felt something else, an undeniable thread of empowerment. "Interesting," Rachel finally said, her tone clipped, a veil of professionalism thrown over her initial surprise. "These aren't just sketches, they're concepts. But tell me, Larry, how do you propose to fit them into our practices? This is a fast-paced environment where only proven methods survive." Proven methods. The phrase struck Larry like a blow. His mind raced for a response, the flicker of doubt trailing behind his resolved exterior. It would be so easy to retreat into self-doubt, to echo the voices that had forced him into invisibility. Yet, he remembered Emily's unwavering belief in him. "You ask how they fit," he replied, finding a steadiness in his voice he didn't know he possessed. "But what if what we're doing isn't the only way? What if we can disrupt our own patterns? These designs are the synergy of what I see every day, the untapped beauty that exists in overlooked spaces. I want to innovate with you, not just to conform." Rachel's brow furrowed, the gears visibly turning in her mind. For a moment, he felt hopeful, not just for himself, but for everyone trapped in the cycle of dismissing the unconventional. He'd come to realize that even within the confines of his role, he bore the capacity to inspire others, to challenge the status quo. But as encouragement bubbled within him, he also recognized the reality. Acceptance wouldn't come easily. He was not just confronting Rachel, but the shadows of fear that loomed over him. He glanced at his sketches again, a kaleidoscope of dreams that defined his reality, each stroke both an invitation and a challenge. Larry took a step closer to the table, his hands shaking slightly as he positioned the sketches before a gathering of disbelieving eyes. "This one is a concept for a collaborative workspace that embraces natural light," he explained, his passion colored in every word. "It ignites creativity while fostering community among co-workers. People crave connection, and this design reflects that." As he spoke, he became lost in his vision, a stream of confidence washing over him. With every detail elaborated, he noticed Rachel's frown begin to soften, curiosity woven into her expression. Yet across the room there were others, architects whispering among themselves, their laughter thick with disbelief. "You think you can come in here, glorified janitor, and lecture us on design?" A young architect sneered, breaking through the barrier of cautious respect. "What do you know about competition and deadlines?" The words hit sharply, a stark resurrection of the self-doubt he had only just begun to cast off. The room's energy shifted. Like dark clouds encroaching, the whispers of ridicule grew louder, threatening to envelop him in their storm. He felt the urge to retreat again, to summon the familiar comfort of invisibility that had accompanied him for years. But a fire ignited within him, a resolute challenge against the very foundations of his past. He could, and he would, stand his ground. "I know more than you think. I've seen the power of collaboration that transcends degrees and accolades. I'm not just a janitor, I am a catalyst for ideas." As the words left his mouth, he felt a rush of clarity. His identity was no longer shackled by the expectations of his past. He was a creator, a visionary. Rachel's voice cut through the noise again. "Enough. If we're going to explore this, let's engage with it properly." Could this be the spark of a new beginning, a bridge between their worlds? As the meeting shifted towards a more constructive dialogue, Larry resisted the urge to bask in his small victory. Instead, he recognized that this journey was far from over. The realization soared through him. This could lead to an opportunity to truly change, but at what cost? As the architects began to express their concerns and curiosities, an unforeseen level of tension surged within him. He had stepped onto a battlefield, but would it be enough to withstand the fight ahead? Uncertainty twisted in his gut. This was just the beginning, the challenge of proving himself now looming larger than ever. The moment of truth had emerged, but how would he navigate the reality of sharing space with adversaries hidden within allies? What struggles lurked just around the corner, waiting to test his newfound resolve? As the meeting progressed, Larry's heart raced in tandem with the debate swirling around him. Rachel took the lead, inviting others to weigh in, but with an air of newfound respect, an unexpected allyship born from vulnerability. The young architect, still skeptical, glared at Larry, determination curdling into disdain. "So you're suggesting we throw out our entire methodology based on, what, a few doodles on napkins?" Each word was loaded like a bullet, and Larry could almost feel them piercing his resolve. But instead of crumbling, he stood taller, feeling the rush of adrenaline surge through him. "No one is asking for a complete overhaul. I'm asking for an exploration of what's possible. We work so hard to maintain systems, yet sometimes the best ideas are born from chaos, from a shift in perspective." The challenge was palpable, hanging thick in the air. He scanned the faces before him, taking in the subtle shifts of intrigue and dismissal. Was he really reaching them, or was it just wishful thinking? The internal dialogue quickly morphed from doubt into strategy. He needed to appeal not just to their egos, but to their drive for innovation in a competitive market. "What if," he began, thoughts clicking into place like puzzle pieces, "we could conduct a pilot project, just one space, an experimental design that could showcase how my concepts might enhance functionality and energy. We could measure productivity, employee satisfaction, real data that might just shift perceptions." A smattering of murmurs rippled through the crowd, the climate changing as they processed his suggestion. Rachel's interest sharpened. She leaned forward, clearly enticed. "That's actually not a bad idea, Larry. But what are you envisioning? Financially, it's crucial that we balance costs." Deep down, Larry had anticipated this question. He had crafted a budget outline during the previous sleepless nights. This was his moment to weave the threads of possibility with practicality. I've looked into alternative materials and sustainable practices that are cost-effective. Initial investments would be low, and the long-term benefits would outweigh the upfront costs. I'm willing to take the lead on this. Rachel nodded, though the young architect remained visibly dissatisfied, arms crossed defiantly. And who would take you seriously if you're leading this? Just because you're willing doesn't mean we should all fall in line. His resolve wavered for just a heartbeat, the voice of doubt whispering maliciously in the back of his mind. He had faced ignorance before, but now, standing on the precipice of transformation, he felt a strong urge to make them see past their preconceived notions. I don't expect anyone to follow blindly, he countered, his voice steady and strong. But what I do expect is a chance to prove myself. If I fail, I'll take full responsibility. But if it works, well, then we all thrive. Sometimes the most unexpected people can shine in situations deemed impossible. You must all decide if that potential is worth investigating. The silence that followed felt electric, charged with the tension of possibility and disbelief. Looking around, he sensed the architecture firm was grappling with an internal upheaval. It was more than just Larry's representation at stake. It was a confrontation of their refusal to entertain vulnerability and collaboration. Then, an unexpected shift occurred. Rachel's expression morphed from contemplative to resolute as she turned to the group. Let's consider Larry's proposition. A pilot project could be interesting, but we'll gather experts from both teams to evaluate its feasibility. As murmurs escalated again, there was a strange mixture of hope and disbelief, but Larry felt fortified. It was the first stride toward acknowledgement, a ripple that indicated a turn from defensive resistance to possible collaboration. Yet, beneath his fragile exhilaration, anxiety simmered. What if the project failed? The weight of that possibility pressed down on him, reminding him of the precariousness of his new footing. Determined, Larry resolved to channel his energy into the pilot project as both his job and his chance to assert his identity. But as the meeting adjourned, he encountered the young architect's piercing gaze one last time. You think this will earn you your stripes? You're still just a janitor in our world. The rawness of those words burst like a dam, threatening to drown out his optimism. Could he maintain this newfound momentum amidst the continued skepticism? The shadows of his past loomed, whispering doubts that clawed at his emerging self-confidence. He needed a plan, a way to show the doubters his worth under their tightly wound scrutiny. As he left the meeting room, driven but anxious, a concrete resolve solidified within him. He would prove not just to them, but to himself, that he was more than his title. And as that certainty began to galvanize his thoughts, another question arose. What vulnerabilities would he need to confront as he embarked on this project? What did he have to risk in his quest for validation? He could feel the weight of the fight unfolding silently around him, and as he stepped into the bustling corridor, the path to his transformation felt treacherous, yet undeniably exhilarating. Larry's determination pulsed as he walked to his workspace, the bright fluorescent lights contrasting sharply with the doubts that still clung to him. Knowing he would be under scrutiny heightened his sense of purpose. The pilot project was not just an experiment to him, but a springboard for his aspirations. The whispers of that young architect's condescending remark echoed in his mind, yet each echo only fanned the flames of his resolve. He stopped at his cluttered desk, a melange of cleaning supplies and project sketches. For a fleeting moment, he felt a wave of nostalgia wash over him. This desk had borne witness to both his lowest lows and his burgeoning ambitions. What had once felt like a stifling cage was, in this moment, a sanctuary of creative potential. Pacing the small confines of his workspace, ideas collided in his mind. He had to kick off this pilot project with vigor. The first step would be assembling a team. Perhaps those intrigued by his proposal would be willing to hear him out, even if others would not. He sent out an email to Rachel, suggesting a brainstorming session with those who showed interest during the meeting. As he typed, a whirlwind of thoughts swirled around him. He envisioned the space, the transformations that could take place. By using sustainable materials and innovative designs, The project could challenge the very fabric of their established workflow. But he needed principles to guide his vision. He must ensure the project was not merely theoretical, but practical, measurable, and ultimately, a testament to his competencies. Once he hit send, Larry took a moment to breathe. Noting how quickly he had shifted from passive observer to active participant gave him a surge of confidence. Yet the feelings of vulnerability lingered. No one could know how much he constantly battled his past perception, his status as a janitor. It haunted him, just as persistent as the physical dust that lay underfoot. Later that day, as he sifted through ideas, another challenge emerged. Rachel replied, excited, yet with one glaring question. "What's our timeline?" Flashes of doubt flickered. Could he handle the pressure? Would he deliver? The insinuation that time could slip through his fingers caused a pit to form in his stomach. With every ticking moment, the project took shape in his mind. He envisioned an eclectic mix of groups, designers, engineers, and even those who cleaned the spaces affected. What fresh insights could they all contribute? Each voice added a layer to his awakening realization. Collaboration was not just about gathering opinions but unleashing collective potential. The idea of inclusivity sparked a newfound conviction in him. He would call upon others to break department silos, to bring those hidden voices into the forefront. Much of what he had learned came from observing the nuances of interactions while cleaning. The assumptions of hierarchy often stifled creativity, and this pilot could be a line drawn in the sand, a stand against stagnation. Motivated, he began mapping out a calendar, listing tasks against deadlines. He meticulously planned meetings and check-ins, ensuring that there would always be accountability running alongside innovation. The next morning, as he prepared for the first official brainstorming meeting, the weight of his responsibilities pressed heavily on him. Each decision felt like a knife edge. One slip could undermine the entire project, confirming the skeptic's suspicions. Were all the risks mounting to a collapse? Yet, with the image of the young architect's disbelieving glare in his mind, a surge of adrenaline jolted him. He may have been a janitor, but he now held the blueprint to something greater, the potential to redefine not just his position, but maybe even the company's approach to design itself. Just as he was about to leave, Larry caught a glimpse of a poster on the wall. "Innovation starts at the edge of your comfort zone." He felt a thrill rush through him. This project was his edge, nudging him into unfamiliar territories. As he entered the conference room, he was surprised to find a small crowd had gathered. Some he recognized as previous skeptics, now seeming genuinely interested. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to guarded intrigue. This was his moment. But deep down, doubt lingered like an unwelcome companion. Could he actually lead them into a new era of design innovation? The silence as he stepped forward was almost suffocating, and the stakes felt higher than ever. What he said next could either validate his worth or further entrench his past. As the meeting commenced, there was a tension in his throat. It was time to shed the cloak of the janitor once and for all. What revelations awaited him as he stepped into the unknown that lay ahead? The air hummed with anticipation as Larry stood at the front of the conference room, a palpable tension woven into the fabric of the crowd's collective silence. All eyes were on him, an assemblage of skeptics and allies, architects and engineers, each one potentially swaying the tides of his future. He took a deep breath, focusing on the sprawling blueprints he had laid before him. These were not merely sketches, they were the manifestation of his vision, his beliefs, and perhaps the redemption he sought. He began by acknowledging the initial perception of the project. "I know many of you might be wondering how a janitor can propose innovative architectural solutions," he stated, his voice steady but laced with urgency. A few gasps came from the audience, and Larry sensed the doubt, but instead of crumbling, he used it as fuel. "But I believe innovation comes from understanding every layer of our environment, literally." Transitioning into his ideas, he spoke passionately about the potential for sustainable materials and energy-efficient designs. He pointed to the blueprints, detailing how each element was purposefully designed, not just to elevate aesthetics, but to serve their communities and workplaces in meaningful ways. He urged them to think beyond traditional boundaries. "Collaboration is the linchpin of success," he declared, emphasizing his vision of a project that encompassed all voices, including the often forgotten perspectives about the spaces they occupied. Throughout the presentation, Larry noticed subtle shifts in the room. Raised eyebrows began to soften, nods replaced skepticism, and the energy in the space surged from doubt to curiosity. Rachel's encouraging smile grounded him as he continued to weave his narrative, combining technical elements with heartfelt anecdotes about the places he had cleaned, how each space had a story, his stories. Yet, despite the growing intrigue, an old fear lurked in his subconscious, the fear of not being enough. What if they eventually saw through his facade? What if he stumbled, validating their doubts? To quell the encroaching panic, he amended his approach, opening the floor for questions. This was no longer just his project. It belonged to everyone present, and every concern added weight to its foundation. As questions arose, Larry deftly navigated through them. He embraced the criticisms, turning them into opportunities for deeper conversation. He even acknowledged his past openly, stating, "I have learned from the ground up. My experiences are threaded throughout this plan." Each exchange renewed his confidence, and his voice grew warmer, more authoritative. However, during a particularly pointed interrogation from one of the lead architects, he felt a familiar sinking sensation. "Can you assure us this project won't be just another half-baked idea?" The question hung in the air, sharp and accusing. For a fleeting moment, doubt surged back, gripping his heart. But then, he remembered. It was not simply the title of janitor that shaped his worth, but how he had transformed that identity into an asset. In a moment of clarity, he leaned in, forcing intensity into his gaze. "I can't promise perfection. What I can promise, though, is relentless dedication and a commitment to listening and adapting." The room was still, almost hypnotized by his vulnerability. Larry realized he wasn't merely defending himself, as he had always felt compelled to do, but establishing a mantra of authenticity rooted in growth and resilience. As the meeting wrapped up, a glint of encouragement sparkled in Rachel's eye, and murmurs of approval rippled through the group. He hadn't just presented a project, he had opened a dialogue, a collaboration grounded in sincerity, respect, and a shared vision for change. Outside the conference room, Larry felt a sudden tang of uncertainty. Had he won them over, or was this just the beginning of a more profound challenge? As he walked away, adrenaline coursing through him, new questions began to form. How would he manage the dynamics of a diverse team, especially with people who had doubted him? Would they truly embrace his ideas, or would they revert to old habits, favoring their established roles over innovative disruption? With a race of thoughts in his mind, Larry sighed. He was on the precipice of something momentous, but the path seemed fraught with obstacles yet to be navigated. Thoughts of the skeptics and supporters coalesced into a single, pressing realization. He was just beginning to tap into the depths of his potential. With clarity creeping in, he wondered grimly, was he truly prepared for the feedback that might come next? Standing at the door, he caught a lingering glance at the blueprints, his vision now undeniably intertwined with the voices of many. But he couldn't shake the haunting echo of that architect's question. The time had come to not only confront the doubts of others, but to confront his own. What transformations still awaited him as he delved deeper into this uncharted territory? As days turned into weeks, Larry found himself enmeshed in the framework of collaboration he had envisioned. Each morning, he would arrive at the office with a renewed purpose, buzzed by the echoes of his presentation. Yet the initial enthusiasm was overshadowed by a daunting reality. He needed to keep proving himself amidst a landscape of seasoned professionals. Questions about his capacity to integrate into this team began to gnaw at his confidence, puncturing the veil of optimism that had shrouded his mind after the presentation. He spent his evenings poring over books on architecture and sustainable design, desperately trying to navigate this unfamiliar territory. While the frameworks of sustainable architecture inspired him, the terminology and intricate design principles felt like a foreign language. He would scribble notes and gather insights, hoping to catch up with the brilliance of his colleagues. Doubt, however, spun a web of anxiety within him. He remained acutely aware that one misstep could unravel the progress he had made. The first team brainstorming session arrived, a colossal event for him, and unbeknownst to Larry, a trial that would test the limits of his newfound resolve. The conference room, a contrasting white backdrop against the warmth of pastels from architectural renderings, sparked a blend of creativity and tension. Faces, some familiar, others intimidating, filled the space as the discussion commenced. Larry held his breath, balancing the thrill of collaboration against the fear of being sidelined. As ideas bounced like vibrant paint splatters on a canvas, Larry struggled to interject. He had resolved to share thoughts and strategies based on his experiences as a janitor, but as proposals flew and discussions intensified, the weight of hesitation crept back. The presence of the lead architect, whose challenging question still lingered in Larry's mind, rendered him mute. Something shifted internally. Either he could let this cycle of fear dictate his participation, or he could find a way to wield his unique perspective as a strength. Suddenly, an anecdote sprang to life in his mind about a dilapidated community building he'd previously cleaned. It was filled with wasted potential, and echoed the disconnect between the people and the space. With an unexpected surge of courage, he raised his hand. The room quieted to a hush, the anticipatory gaze of his colleagues focused intently on him. "When I cleaned that building," he started, his voice shaking slightly but firming with resolve, "I found treasures hidden beneath the grime, the stories of those who used it. What if we approached our designs with a similar mindset? What if we look beyond the plans and really ask, how can this structure enrich lives?" Silence followed, thick with consideration. Just as he feared skepticism would rear its head, an architect called out, "That's an interesting point, Larry. We often forget to weave the human experience into designs we dream up. What if we did that?" Elation rushed through him, an electric pop that invigorated the air. Others chimed in, inspired by this fresh take, infusing the discussion with an unexpected depth. Larry began to notice slight shifts in attitude, the previously aloof expressions contorted into thoughtful contemplation. They were beginning to value not just his ideas, but also his lived experiences. As the meeting wrapped up, Larry felt a wave of euphoria crash over him, the kind that clung to the spine and ignited a small flame of belief. He was no longer just a janitor with a vision, he was becoming a recognized contributor. However, as the door to the conference room swung shut behind him, the wider reality returned. He had faced an initial challenge, yes, but how long could his newfound credibility last? Would these moments of acceptance translate into lasting trust? Standing beside the blueprints that had sparked change, Larry realized he was at a pivotal juncture. He needed to sustain this momentum, to dive deeper into the realms of collaboration. Yet, he felt the shadows of doubt looming once again. If he could challenge the architecture norm, whom else might he need to confront within himself to fully embrace this role? A simple glance at his notes revealed gaps in his understanding, gaps that could tarnish the bridges he sought to build. As he pondered this realization, another architect approached his side. "You made an impact today, Larry. Don't let that be your one shot. Let's talk more about how we can develop those ideas." A rush of hope washed over him, but lingering questions remained. Was this the start of a continuous evolution, or merely a fleeting stroke of luck? The answer awaited discovery in the layers yet to be peeled back. Determined to capitalize on the praise from his peers, Larry dove deeper into his work. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity, a blur of meetings and discussions as he sought out opportunities to collaborate further. He increasingly engaged with his colleagues, offering insights and suggestions rooted in his past experiences. Yet beneath this newfound enthusiasm lay an undercurrent of anxiety, a worry that he was teetering on a precipice of deception. Was he truly becoming a valuable team member, or was he simply riding the wave of an initial success? Every interaction shifted the lens through which he viewed his contributions. A compliment here, a thoughtful exchange there, reinforced his belief momentarily, but doubts quickly followed, like shadows stalking a candle's flame. Adding to the pressure, the lead architect's earlier critiqued question lingered at the back of his mind. How could he continue to deliver? To bolster his knowledge, Larry decided to immerse himself more thoroughly in architecture principles. He signed up for an online course. As the lessons unfolded, Larry experienced a jarring revelation. The theories he once deemed impenetrable began to untangle themselves, revealing threads that connected with his personal insights. Concepts such as user-centric design resonated deeply with him, amplifying his understanding of the stories that buildings could tell. He spent afternoons sketching ideas, intertwining learned principles with gut feelings from his past. But as he grafted this knowledge onto his budding identity as an architect, unease seeped in. What if he misinterpreted these lessons? What if, in his naivety, his approach offended the very professionals he aimed to impress? Vulnerability surfaced as he confronted skepticism not just from others, but from himself. On the rare occasions when he felt too bold, he would retreat into self-doubt, questioning whether he had stumbled into a game where the rules were far beyond anything he could grasp. The tension boiled over during the next team session. Larry shuffled his notes, riddled with reminders of his course learnings, as he prepared to present a modified design concept that integrated a more thoughtful approach to the spaces around them. The room buzzed with anticipation. Each architect had their agenda, armed with ideas shaped by years in the industry. As he spoke, a knot of fear tightened in his stomach, each word feeling like a delicate balancing act. When discussions began, Larry sensed the pendulum swing. One architect praised his approach while another critiqued it brutally. "We cannot sentimentalize design based on personal anecdote. Architecture is about precision and functionality." The voice spat, cutting through the compassion he had initially sensed. The taunt sent a shock cascading through him. Memories of cleaning overrun spaces collided with insecurity. Had he overstepped in sharing insights from his past? The weight of his vulnerability threatened to drown out the flame of belief he had kindled. Yet, as the exchange spiraled, a flicker of determination sparked within him. He recalled the dilapidated building, the faces he had witnessed, the dreams tangled in urban decay. With a breath, he retorted, "But what is functionality without context? Buildings shape lives, and they deserve more than just be seen as structures. They should embody the human experience." The courage of his convictions reverberated, soothing the earlier sting. After the session, some of his colleagues approached him, validation in their eyes. "You stood your ground today, Larry. Don't forget that." While their words carried weight, his earlier vulnerability hung in the air like a specter, continuously reminding him that the journey was fraught with conflict. He had made his mark in an unexpected way, yet the path was littered with doubts clamoring for attention. Larry stood at a crossroads, one path leading toward unwavering confidence, the other spiraling into self-questioning uncertainty. The question loomed larger than ever. Could he adapt to thrive in this new world, or would he be stifled beneath the weight of others' expectations? In a moment of introspection, he caught sight of a blueprint sprawled across the table, emphasizing the sharp angles of ambition. The answer hung tantalizingly close, just beyond his grasp. In the depths of professional strife and self-discovery, the next step he took would echo louder than any word spoken, a testament to whether he would embrace this role fully or retreat back into obscurity. And that elusive answer awaited him at the next team meeting, where stakes would heighten, testing the resilience he'd built against the creeping doubt that remained a constant in the back of his mind. Larry stood before the conference room door, palms slick with sweat, thoughts racing. The harsh fluorescent lights above seemed to pulse, a staccato rhythm mirroring his anxieties. He had fretted over every detail he would present today, meticulously reviewing his materials until they bled into a faint blur of numbers and architectural terms. Despite the support he received after his last presentation, something gnawed at him, an itch deep in his subconscious that he couldn't quite scratch. Today had to be different. The team was expecting more from him. Bolstered by the faint glimmer of acceptance, doubt wove its way through his resolve. Today they weren't merely asking for his ideas, they were looking for his voice. Could it withstand the scrutiny? As he entered, the room filled with palpable energy. Colleagues leaned in, discussing sketches and projects. Larry felt their gaze flicker toward him, not with expectation, but with curiosity. He pulled a deep breath in, his lungs expanding against a mixture of nerves and a hint of defiance, motivated not to fade into the backdrop of industry veterans. Setting his work on the table, he made eye contact with the lead architect, the one who had critiqued him so harshly before. Today, he would focus not on convincing her, but on sharing the essence of what he had learned. The conversation unfolded, and when it was his time to speak, the room quieted. Today, I want to present a concept based not solely on functional design, but one that also respects the emotional landscapes of users, he began, voice steady despite the tremor within. I believe that architecture can be profoundly personal. Each space tells a story and connects us to our environment and ourselves. The words flowed from him, drawing on his experiences, each statement careful and crafted. As he showcased his design, he incorporated sketches of community areas, play spaces, and gathering zones. It was not just about the functionality, it was about the human interaction that thrived within them. Each sketch act was an attempt to bring out the narrative hidden within the blueprints, the essence of a community wrapped in brick and mortar. Yet the lead architect fixed him with a steely gaze, a mixture of intrigue and skepticism. "This sounds all very sentimental, Larry," she interjected. "But how do we ensure that these spaces remain functional and not just narratives?" His heartbeat quickened. Was it back to the drawing board? He could feel the walls closing in, pressure mounting as he sensed his chance to establish himself threading through his fingertips. We don't have to sacrifice function for sentiment. By centering the user in our designs, we enhance functionality. Engaged users maintain the space, elevate the community, his confidence solidified, and in turn, they create a stronger identity in the built environment. He laid out a structured argument, fusing theory gleaned from his course with heartfelt insight. The skeptics in the room began to shift in their seats, quiet murmurs flickered among them. He could feel the air change. Each individual in that room, architects worth their salt, brought their voices into an active dialogue. As the session unfolded, it became a cacophony of audio, a real debate filled with both support and dissent. Comments flowed back and forth, challenges erupted, and, to his surprise, Larry found himself at the center of the storm. The thrill was intoxicating. He was not shrinking beneath scrutiny, but rather growing, expanding into the role he so fiercely desired. With each question posed, he felt reassurance spark anew. Even when those fervently skeptical about his vision pressed harder, beckoning logical rebuttals, he found that he relished the exchange. Eventually, the meeting concluded, and Larry exhaled, realizing soundness in his approach had found fertile ground. His vision, while still met with opposition, had ignited a dialogue, a movement of sorts, a bastion of support where doubt transformed into inquiry. But as he stepped back from the room, buoyed by the avid exchanges and hopeful responses, he noticed the lead architect observing him one last time. She wore a complex expression, a mixture of admiration and contemplation. In this moment, the stakes hadn't just shifted, they had exploded. He had navigated the rocky terrain of doubt, but a new obstacle shimmered on the horizon, the upcoming project review. It wouldn't be enough to inspire. He needed to design and defend the iterations of his ideas before higher-ups, men and women with a celebrated legacy. The thought simmered within him. Could he truly rise to that challenge? As the echoes of the meeting faded, so too did the comfort of his present achievements. What lay ahead would compel him to dive deeper than he had before, a storm demanding resilience and clarity, where his mettle would be tested like never before. In this new chapter of uncertainty and potential, Larry grasped the undeniable truth. Every encounter would shape him, whether as a beacon of inspiration or a harbinger of failure. The world of architecture was vast and unforgiving, and soon he would find himself pitted against it once more, where the true measure of his worth awaited him. What would he uncover in the depths of excellence and expectation? Days passed into a flurry of preparation as Larry plunged headlong into the demands of the approaching project review. Each effort became a layer of growth, contributing to his competency and solidifying his identity as a collaborator, not just an employee. With an unwavering commitment to his vision, he refined the details of his proposals, skillfully intertwining the emotional tapestry of user experiences with robust architectural principles. Stepping into the conference room once again felt exhilarating, the previous trepidation replaced by a grounded sense of purpose. He faced a panel of seasoned architects, their reputations solidified by years in the field. They were unyielding, yet Larry felt a difference today, He was no longer just a shadow on the periphery. This was his moment to demonstrate the intersection of practicality and creativity, evidence of his evolution through hard work and adherence to collaboration. He began his presentation with confidence, detailing how his concept emphasized spaces that foster genuine human connection while respecting architectural integrity. The room was attentive, each face reflecting curiosity and skepticism blended with something new, acknowledgement. He noticed nods of recognition as he highlighted data on user engagement, showcasing how his designs increased productivity and morale based on pilot project feedback. One of the lead architects furrowed his brow and leaned forward. "Your ideas are compelling, Larry, but how do we know they're not just naive aspirations? What evidence do you have that they will perform in real-world scenarios?" The challenge cut deep, but instead of crumbling, Larry stood his ground, envisioning Emily's innocent dreams thriving amidst adversity. Data and testimonials from our pilot project illustrate that when users are actively engaged in the design process, the outcomes result not just in functional efficiency, but also a psychological uplift, he asserted. "My experiences and the feedback collected support that fundamentally transforming our approach can lead to sustainable success." An air of contemplation settled over the panel. For the first time, Larry noticed a shift in their body language, a subtle leaning forward, engaged and curious. He pressed on, addressing potential concerns with concrete examples of adaptability and iterative design processes. The realization that he was no longer justifying his presence but actively participating ignited a flame within him. As questions morphed into a dialogue, Larry found satisfaction flooding his veins. Each counter-argument he faced became an invitation to clarify and strengthen his points. Proposing a clear roadmap rooted in feedback, evidence, and empathy, he illustrated how their traditional design methodologies could be complemented with a more inclusive approach. The challenge became a remarkable partnership in exploration, where skepticism was softened into a constructive inquiry. The session culminated with spirited discussion, Larry's ideas thriving in the dynamic exchange of perspectives. As the meeting wrapped up, applause broke the surface tension, a collective acknowledgement of the risks he had taken and the vision he had laid before them. One architect, previously a critic, leaned in. "You've definitely earned your seat at the table today, Larry." Exiting the room, Larry felt a wave of relief wash over him. A moment had crystallized. This was more than a presentation. It was a manifestation of his transformation. He had shown them he was competent, capable, and above all, a visionary laying foundations far beyond his janitorial past. For the first time, Larry stood not just as a dreamer, but as a sentinel of change. The days that followed brought forth not only accolades but invitations, collaborative sessions with diverse teams whose eyes now opened to perspectives they had long overlooked. Recognition grew within the firm, as Larry contributed to projects with tangible impacts, gradually earning respect from even the most daunting peers. Yet, amid the newfound successes, something inside him began to stir, the reminder that transformation was an ongoing journey. As he reflected on his achievements, he recognized that the real challenge looming ahead was sustaining this growth and fostering a culture of inclusivity in a traditionally rigid environment. He aspired to be more than a participant. He aimed to be a catalyst. In his role as an emerging leader, Larry realized that each step forward necessitated him to embrace vulnerability while continuously challenging the status quo. He sought to facilitate open dialogues, to encourage the voices that often went unheard. His journey had forged a bond with his colleagues, a tapestry of shared ambition, respect, and mutual growth. Larry stood at the threshold of profound fulfillment. Not only had he transformed his narrative, but also inspired others to do the same. Recognition, productivity, and a surge of confidence filled his days, each moment etched in the testimony of his journey from the depths of anonymity to a noteworthy presence in the architectural realm. As he reflected on how far he had come, Larry understood he wasn't merely a janitor aspiring to architect. He had conquered self-doubt and embraced his place among innovators, a true leader. The journey was far from over, and exciting challenges awaited, but he was now equipped to navigate them with the steadfast belief that dreams, once hidden, could indeed carve paths in the realm of reality. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. It truly makes a difference. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Larry's journey and share your own experiences of overcoming challenges. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible conclusion. Your support fuels the fire of inspiring transformation.